Hey, what's up? I'm going to show you a little bit about debugging in Xcode. So I'm working on a little demo app here and playing around with Canvas and drawing stuff, and it's crashing. So I want to show you how you can investigate that and sort of dig into like what's going wrong here. So I can drag this, and this is using the canvas, and I can resize. But if I drag too big, all of a sudden preview crashes. So why does it do that? That's where you're going to be kind of out of luck with the preview. I mean, we might get some details, but you want to be able to debug this. So I don't know what we're going to get out of here. If we do generate report, oh, here we go. So right here, that is the reason. This is an index out of range. So what's out of range about this, and why is this crashing? Because it sometimes works and it sometimes doesn't. If I restart this, crashes. Let's switch over to this other view. Make this bigger, hit reset. We have a lot more. And this might be a little slow. So one of these is using the canvas and the other one is using just rectangles. So this is going to be sluggish with this many views, or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, views on screen. Okay, so we're back to 2D. So now I can resize and it's not crashing. But if I go too big, it crashes again. So something's wrong with my logic, and it's a question of like, where is that crashing? So let's actually run this on a simulator. And keep the simulator right on top of the preview. So dragging, I can sort of zoom in, zoom out. Clicking will fill some areas. You can sort of zoom in to make it smaller. Click here, that will fill. Zoom out. No crash. Okay, if I hit reset, zoom in, that's fine. But the moment I go bigger, now we're crashing. So here we get a fatal error, index out of bounds. And if you've got this in Xcode, now you can start using LLDB and some debug commands along with the output window. So this is going to be this panel along the bottom. You click this button, that's right where I am. So that's going to be a little hard to see. So I'll just bring this up, and this button's going to hide and show that panel. It is Command Option Y, I think, if I'm selected on Xcode. Sorry, Command Shift Y to do that action. Super useful. I don't think I have Keyboard Caster on, so is that Command Shift Y? And I gotta start it. Did I mess that up? Okay, so that'll do my shortcuts. And then this is going to be our variable view, and this is going to be our debug view, where we can type commands and sort of see them. Right off the bat, we can see what X and Y are. And let's jump to where we are. So this is our stack frame over on the left. There's a bunch of, you'll see assembly code and stuff like that for low-level stuff, and then our actual code. So there's some filtering along the bottom left here, so we can just show like our code. I don't remember what this one's doing. Crash threads, so that's just focusing. And this one should be just the apps, the main things. And then this one is related to queues. So we've got something happening. There's some animation layers and stuff. And then we've got some subscript. So let's look at where it crashed, and that's going to be here. And so we have an index out of bounds. So let's look at the values. You can hover over them, or if you're debugging, a lot of times I'll just type P, and then the variable to print it out. Sometimes, depending on how big your application is, these won't populate right away. So this can be faster to sort of see that information. Sometimes this stuff is a little bit sluggish, and you sometimes have to switch from auto to like all variables to see everything, because it doesn't always show you everything that you want to see. So that might be something to play around with. So I can type P for print. And then there's also PO, which will generally print an object. And so that might print a little bit differently depending on the type of thing you're printing. So if I printed out, I think, some of these may or may not exist. So I've got a grid here. So I can print that out, stuff like that. So if I do P grid, it's going to potentially print a little bit different. Depends on if it's an object or if it's just like a small type, like an int, where it's just a structure essentially, or simple data. So what is wrong here? And this wasn't obvious to me at first. It took me a little bit to figure out, which is why I wanted to make a little video about it. So what's going on here? So I am iterating over, we have to take a step back, and we've got a canvas. And this is like a 2D canvas. It's got a certain size, and I've got a size. So I've figured out that the grid size is, I think, 393 by 393 points. I think that's what this is. So which one is this? So there's some stuff going on here. I'm trying to calculate how wide each one of these squares can be. But that's not the real problem here. What's happening is we're iterating from 0 to grid.size, and this size property is a published property, and it is being mutated by my UI. Apparently I'm not good at finding this. I thought I knew exactly where this was. Okay, so here we see that I am using the slider to mutate the size, and that's going to be our problem, though that size doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why it's saying that. I've got a min size and a max size, and the max size is definitely 100. For some reason, that is reporting. I must be setting it to the actual. I could be setting it multiple places, but I didn't think I was. Anyway, coming back here, we're going to look at each one of these values and try and determine, like, why are we going out of bounds? So printing out grid.size, we're going to see is 28. And that's kind of what I expect. I don't know what, honestly, I don't know what, oh yeah, I know what that one is. Why is it printing it's printing the wrong thing here? That's what's confusing me. Okay, so this is false. That's not true. We just printed out what grid size is. Grid size is 28.7, which is what I expect, because that's coming in from the slider. The slider was not that far over. It goes up to 100, so it was around like 25%. In this case, it was 28% of the way, so a quarter of the way over. I've never seen this before where it's like telling me the wrong value, so that was interesting. So then I'm doing all this math, and that's 28. But let's look at the actual grid. So if I dive into the grid and I go PO grid dots, and in this case I've got rows, and this is an array of cells. So I can print this out, and this is going to tell me 25. And so right here you're going to see, well, 24 is less than 28. So what's happened is the underlying size has changed, but the data structure has not changed. And so then it's trying to redraw with this new size, but the data hasn't been, I think this is related to the SwiftUI update loop or something. The data hasn't forced my UI to resize. So that's really what the kicker is. And you can see the same thing if we go into pgrid.rows. Or we go to the first row dot cells dot count. This one's also going to be 25. So what's the solution? The solution is I don't think I want to do it this way. And it depends on how you approach it. You can use this grid size if I always wanted like a set size and then I sort of want to like narrow it in. Like that's the one thing I like about the preview. We'll see that in a second. But what we're going to do is instead of doing the grid size, we're going to actually use the array elements. So let's go in and edit this. So it's going to be grid.rows.count. And it's always a square, so I can just use this for both. And then that should fix this particular issue. And we can go ahead and run it. So now what we're expecting is we can go back and forth, and it hopefully shouldn't crash, but there could be another instance that would cause it to crash. So the way I was causing it to crash was resetting once I got to this size, because that then creates a new data structure that is not as big. It's not 100 by 100. And so then we try and go bigger. So here you're going to see that it's not dynamically adding stuff because it was just created for that bounds, but we're no longer running into the crash, which is great. So if I hit reset, it will regenerate to fill. And then I don't want to be that big when I go to rectangle grid, because this one has to add gestures for every single one of these dots. And it is, it's close to 50 by 50. So there's 250 views that are all sort of smushed together in here. And it still works, but this is going to be way faster once we want to start doing some of this. And you can see that there's some kind of gesture gate timed out, probably because we're adding so many tap gestures to the screen. Cool. So that's one of the issues. There's one other spot that I ran into, and that's in my valid cell logic. So here, I'm again going off of the size of the grid. I don't know how I got this one to trigger, but I got it to trigger one time. And so it's the same type of problem. Is if I want to fix it, then I need to use the actual rows.count. And this is something that you figure out as you're playing around. Like, okay, right now it's crashing. So maybe this is a good way. I don't know if I can repro that. So in here, similar type of problem. So these are just things that you have to keep in mind. And so we'll just go rows.count as our limit. And then here it's going to be rows.count since we're doing squares. It's the same for both the X and the Y direction. And that is that. So that's just a little demo of debugging, sort of how I approach things. If we go ahead and run this one more time, we should be able to see the interface. We can tap and it will fill. It almost makes me want to do my ray tracer again and maybe use Canvas for my ray tracer. I'll have to play around with that. I don't know if I can draw ton of points. I mean, we could always test it. So like, where do I want to go? Here, let's set the default to 1000. Ooh, 1000 by 1000. The actual hit detection logic is really sluggish. So the taps are coming in a little bit slow. And so performance is not great. Probably drawing with metal is going to be a lot better if I want to actually like render a texture. Yeah, so this is still not ideal if you want to do like computer graphic stuff. Like it works for simple shapes and designs. There are a little bit of artifacts. I thought I turned off the spacing, but I can see some visual discontinuities in here with the blue shading. So that's too big. So everything has its place. There's a limit for how many views you can do, and Canvas sort of fills the gap where you need to do a little bit more dynamic. But then you're going to have to drop down to something else, or just like a normal image and like render out the image and display it. Though probably doing metal is going to be more performant if you actually want to like get multiple frames and like move the camera around. So that's a little bit about debugging in Xcode 15 with Swift. I hope you liked this. If you had any questions, comment down below. I'll be making more videos related to more Swift programming and other things. I am going on a trip, so I'm sort of recording some stuff to share with you now while I'm away, and I might make some more stuff while I'm there, but I'm not going to have my green screen, so or my fancy microphone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.